Hi everyone, Kevin Martin, Chief Research Officer at I4CP. Here's our summary recap of our July 17th COVID-19 response series call. It was a doozer, and it was largely because of our guest, Skip Spriggs. Now, folks, not many CHROs have ascended to the role of Chief Executive Officer, but Skip is one of them. He was a longtime member of the I4CP Chief HR Officer Board when he was the CHRO at TIAA, and then he became CEO of the world's most preeminent organization for the advancement of Black people to the role of CEO and to corporate board members. Now, while our research has long shown the connection between D&I and organizational outcomes such as greater innovation and creativity, much higher productivity, revenue growth, etc., the question about whether or not CEOs are finally willing to address and fix the systemic barriers to true diversity and inclusion is now front and center. And Skip shared his raw feelings and perspective with us. Here we go, folks.
This issue around D&I is the only business issue that I've been around for the last 25, 30 years that we can't fix. Or we haven't fixed it, let me say it that way. Some companies have gotten it right, but we haven't fixed it. And the reason we haven't fixed it is because we focused and rewarded activities versus outcomes. And so in any other business environment, when we are underperforming, we put goals against that underperforming issue and we go get it.
All right, well, let's pick up on that theme of goals, because just this month, Skip was also the subject of an interview in an article at HR Executive Magazine talking about how HR has made little progress on D&I, but here's how to move forward. Here's how to fix it. And Skip talked about the lack of goals related to diversity. He also mentioned diversity data not being disaggregated. Here's an example of what he shared. A lot of companies around the Me Too movement put large presses on hiring women, which is great. But what that did is that inflated their diversity numbers. In other words, it showed they were making progress against it, but were they really making progress in, for instance, hiring women of color? And that's the type of masking that can happen without the disaggregation of data. He also talked about the lack of transparency regarding the progress being made and the actual barriers like resistance from culture or leaders or whatever else might be of actually providing pitfall barrier data like that as well. Now, one of the key things that he talked about, which I thought was fantastic in this interview with us, is he was sharing something he called systemic deselection. Now, what does he mean by that? He gave an example of a CEO that that had come to Skip for advice on a referral to someone. He wanted an African-American or Black person on his board. But Skip said, what are your requirements outside of that? And the CEO said that he wanted someone with CEO experience. And Skip gave him the reality, which is, if that's what you want, you've just narrowed your field to 4 people. And Skip talked about how only 4 people are in chief executive officer positions in Fortune 500 companies. So instead of being focused on titles, focus on competencies, focus on the experiences that align most with the needs of the business. Great advice. Now, the poll question that Skip and I co-created going into this was all around, with regard to D&I, does your organization have diversity goals? Does it have inclusion goals? Are you tying the compensation of your leaders to their ability to meet those goals? And what you'll see here is that 58% of the people on our call said, yes, we do have diversity goals, but sadly, only 8% currently put leadership compensation at risk based on that. And that's part of what Skip was talking about, of the lack of accountability. Now, no better way to end a call like this with HR leaders from a business leader who happened to also be a CHRO than some advice to HR leadership. And Skip came right out of the gate.
In your organization, the employees from the very entry level all the way to the top can't clearly articulate what your company culture is and what's important in your company, then people will do what they think is important. And, and it's not just about putting the customer first. It's not just about acting with integrity. I mean, you can find those words on the bank wall anywhere. It really is listening and responding with empathy. It really is about doing the right thing all the time.
And Skip didn't stop there, nor should he, because, one of the things he then went on to talk about is something we heard time and time again in the interviews that we conducted with Fortune 500 board members, which is what they're not getting enough of from the CHRO, is insights into risk and opportunity around the business, even insights that contradict what the CEO is saying based upon what the CHRO knows is right for the business. Here's an example of what Skip shared.
I remember a CEO that I worked for that we had only been in the team together for about 2 weeks. We had a very, very difficult business decision to make. And he wanted to go down one particular road. And what I said to him is, what you're proposing is correct, but it's just not right. And the reason it's not right is because what you're proposing to do, it was relative to a layoff. I said, you're gonna disproportionately affect this group, this population that you say is so important to you because of the way that you want to do this. And we ultimately did it differently, and we did it right and correct. And I think that's the role of the CHRO.
Well said, Skip. And we're thrilled to announce that Skip is one of the presenters at this year's 2020 I4CP Next Practices Now conference. It's 100% virtual, September 28th through October 1st. Skip's going to be joined by fellow luminaries such as Marshall Goldsmith, the world's number one rated executive coach, Diane Gerson from IBM, Pat Waters from ServiceNow, and many others. Please sign up now and join us. It's going to be an event of the ages. And then lastly, next week or this coming week on July 24th, we're thrilled to host Mary Bilbrey from JLL. On July 31st, we have Kristen Robinson from Splunk. Folks, the hits keep on coming. We'll see you soon on these next COVID HR Response Series calls. And until then, be well. Take care.